Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Margaret Brennan. I'm joined here by Senior National Security Analyst Juan Zarate. Good to have you here today.
Margaret. Great to see you.
It's been an interesting week to talk about foreign policy. In the first 4 minutes of the debate on Monday night, you had Mitt Romney mention a country that I think most Americans have never had on their radar, Mali. And he was talking about it because of a resurgent al-Qaeda there. What are you following?
Well, what you have is an al-Qaeda group, al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, that is occupying a vast swath of territory in northern Mali. A group that is aligned ideologically with al-Qaeda, that has been reinforced with arms from Libya and mercenaries that had been in Libya, and that has ties with other parts of the al-Qaeda network. Al-Qaeda members in Somalia, for example, as well as the Nigerian group Boko Haram that we've talked about on the show. So this is a part of the landscape of the global sort of war on terror, if you want to still call it that, where al-Qaeda in some ways is resurgent and where the local and regional actors, as well as the United States and countries like France, are trying to figure out how to contain them and to contain their geographic reach. And that's why I think you saw Governor Romney mention Mali, because it's an emblematic part of the world where al-Qaeda is actually doing well and resurgent and presents a real threat.
And we do know Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is heading to Algeria right next door on Monday to talk about this. So it's an issue for both candidates here that they're going to be watching. One line that got a lot of attention was the tools of war these days. Right. But we really haven't talked about the new methods of war here, cyber terrorism in particular. Were you surprised that there wasn't more of a conversation about that?
Absolutely, Margaret. There's so much discussion in national security circles about the threat of cybersecurity. We've heard Secretary of Defense Panetta talk about a cyber 9/11 on the horizon, the need to defend and also create the proper weapons and protocols to deal with cybersecurity breaches. A lot of talk about China, a lot of talk about Iran, not a lot of talk about the cyber offensives that have come from both countries. We've seen recently from Iran attacks on Saudi Aramco, the Saudi oil company, as well as on U.S. banks coming out of Iran. We know that China is infiltrating for cyber espionage and cyber economic reasons our companies and our government databases. And so this is a huge issue. It's the burgeoning issue in national security. And yet it was largely absent from the debate. And that was an interesting lack of discussion this past week.
Why do you think that was? Just because it's so hard to explain computer hacking?
Well, I think it's hard to explain. I think part of it was Bob Schieffer probably didn't have a chance to ask a question about it specifically, and I think that would have given them an opportunity. But it is a complicated issue, and it's also, I think, hard to articulate when most Americans haven't seen real evidence of this, other than perhaps some identity theft, haven't seen really kind of how this threat is going to manifest from a national security perspective. I think that moment will come when something like an electrical grid or a water system is disrupted via some attack. Then the American public will be energized and will have to deal with it in a more concrete way. But I was surprised it wasn't discussed more.
One issue that has haunted many presidents is the ongoing discord between Israelis and Palestinians. And there really has not been much progress with any kind of peace process over the past 4 years. It's something that President Obama would try to grapple with in the second term. It's unclear what Mitt Romney would do on that front. What are you expecting?
Well, I'm not sure what to expect. I think things are in a pretty bad position. What was interesting in the debate was Mitt Romney talked about the peace process in terms of kind of the failure,
the lack
of meetings between the Israelis and Palestinians for the last 2 years, and really no progress on the horizon. Certainly disunity within the Palestinians themselves. The Fatah party, the Palestinian Authority, largely ruling in the West Bank, and then Hamas that's ruling in Gaza. This week, the Emir of Qatar, the first foreign ruler to visit Gaza and Hamas, that's created a discord again within the Palestinian sort of contingency.
Big pledge of monetary support.
Exactly.
On his visit there as well, which was very, very controversial. Closer to home here, that's ideologically resonant. Something that's a little bit more directly a threat to Americans living along the border in this country is what's happening in Mexico with the drug wars. Not a lot of conversation about Latin America, about South America.
Yeah, a complete absence of discussion of Mexico, which is remarkable given what we know is happening south of the border. Something the administration has called a criminal insurgency led by the drug cartels, with tens of thousands of Mexicans killed over the last 4 or 5 years in the context of these drug wars. And so creates enormous pressure on the border, and we've seen some of those incidents where border security officials have been killed. Enormous instability and questions about the power of the Mexican government to actually control these issues, and real policy questions as to how the U.S. helps the Mexican government deal with these issues. Do we provide them intelligence to go kill or capture drug lords? How much is the American military involved? All of these are critical questions to our very important neighbor to the south.
The only real reference to our neighbors to the south in any way came from Mitt Romney when he was talking about lost opportunity in terms of investment in Latin America.
And trade in Latin America.
Trade and China and the leveraging of natural resources that they've been doing there in our backyard. The other economic issue that was not discussed that could pose a national security threat is what's happening in Europe right now. 500 million Europeans struggling with a debt burden there. It's led to social instability. You've had riots in the streets. You've had a resurgent Nazi party in Greece in particular. Is there a security threat there to the United States in some fashion?
I think absolutely, and especially as the candidates, both of them, talk about economic security, economic strength being the backbone to U.S. national security. You have to look to the crisis in Europe, the crisis of the euro, the crisis of the Union itself, as a major threat to the U.S. economy. Some economists talking about if there is a debt crisis to unfold in Europe, that being sort of the precursor to a new recession for the U.S., a very deep and dangerous one. And so that issue was completely absent from the debate, and very interestingly so. I think part of the reason is, I think from the American perspective, very little that the U.S. thinks it can do at this stage other than to support European efforts, the European Central Bank, the efforts by Merkel in Germany to actually keep the economy on the rails. But I think the chances are that you could have a crisis in the coming months in Europe, and that presents a real risk to U.S. economic security and national security.
And arguably not just for the coming months, the coming years. Citigroup just last week saying, expect this to persist into 2014. You could have a crisis there. So it's something either potential president could be facing. Juan, it's great to talk to you.
Likewise,
and to
Margaret.
get your analysis.
Thank you.
That's Flashpoints. We'll see you next time.